Hi everybody, it's Miss Lisa from the St. Paris Public Library. Welcome to Preschool Storytime. Listen, we're going to read some stories and have a good time, so grab your shaky egg. Here we go. Today I feel like shaking my head. Hey, how about you? Today I feel like shaking my head. Hey, how about you? Today I feel like shaking my head. Hey, what do you say? Jump up and down. Today I feel like jumping. Hey, how about you? Jump nice and high. Today I feel like jumping. Hey, how about you? Today I feel like jumping. Hey, what do you say? Hey, what do you say? Alright, you ready? Quiet as a mouse, up on your tiptoes. Today I feel like tiptoeing. Hey, how about you? Today I feel like tiptoeing. Hey, how about you? Tiptoe around. Today I feel like tiptoeing. Hey, what do you say? Hey, what do you say? Alright, now we're gonna wiggle all over. Today I feel like wiggling. Wiggle your whole body. Hey, how about you? Today I feel like wiggling. Hey, how about you? Today I feel like wiggling. Hey, what do you say? Hey, what do you say? Ready? Shake your egg up high and shake it down low, way down by your feet. Shake it in the middle by your belly button. Shake it up high and shake it down low, way down by your feet. Shake it in the middle by your belly button. Good job, good job. All right, let's read a story. Dog who had kittens. I don't think dogs can have kittens, but this book, that's what it said. Baxter the Basset Hound was in his backyard enjoying the smells of spring. Suddenly he heard a fuss. "Eloise!" the boy was shouting. "Everybody come quick! Look at Eloise!" Baxter trotted towards the side of the garage. He got there just as the boy's parents did. He had to push his head between all the legs to see what was going on. There, laying on her side in a box, was Eloise. When she saw Baxter, she bristled her fur and hissed. Eloise is the cat. Baxter just had time to see the squirming little bodies attached to her belly before the boy led him away to the oak tree. "You better stay here for a while," said the boy. "We're going to move Eloise into the house with the kittens. She's very nervous." So Baxter was chained to the tree and abandoned. "Kittens," he thought. Just what I need. More cats around the place. More attention for Eloise, less attention for me." He lifted his head and howled. Hours went by. No one even looked at him. It was almost dinner time when, to his surprise, Eloise herself came towards him from the house. "Congratulations," he said, as sincerely as he could. Eloise was licking a paw. "Marvelous, aren't they?" she purred. "How many?" "7. 3 of them look like me. Gorgeous." Baxter slumped down in the grass. 7 kittens. This was worse than he'd imagined. "That's nice," he said miserably. "How long am I going to be an outcast then?" "It wasn't my idea to chain you up. All the same, I'd appreciate it if you'd stay away for a while. You are a dog, and the kittens and I are cats. I know you for a very good fellow, but I must warn you, don't come near my kittens." And she stalked off towards the house. She told him, didn't she? Finally, the boy fed Baxter and scratched and hugged him, but the ball didn't come out. Finally, the boy fed Baxter and scratched and hugged him, But the ball didn't come out, and Baxter wasn't invited for a walk. Worst of all, Baxter had to go to bed in the garage. It went on like this for 3 days. Baxter was allowed in the house, but not in the laundry room, where the kittens lay in a large box. He could hear their thin cries from time to time. One day, the family left the house, but didn't quite shut the laundry room door. Baxter nosed it open and pushed inside. He could hear the kittens crying. Eloise was nowhere in sight. Baxter hung his head over the side of the box and had a good look. Suddenly, he didn't feel a bit jealous. They're so tiny, he thought. Their eyes aren't open, and they can't even hold their thoughts, or their little heads up, or walk. The mewing babies seemed to be searching. Their cries were the most pitiful sounds Baxter had ever heard. Suddenly, Baxter was furious with Eloise. Where was she? What right had she to leave her babies alone like that? When had they last eaten? Baxter began to pace around the room. The kittens' cries grew louder. Oh, why doesn't anyone come? He thought desperately. Finally, he went back to the box. The kittens were in a ball in one corner. Delicately, Baxter stepped into the box. He lay down carefully, taking most of the extra space. The kittens sensed his warmth and began to pull themselves towards him, crying louder than ever. Blindly, they stumbled and tumbled over each other until they were between his front paws. Little muzzles scouted his fur. Little mouths sucked at his legs and neck. Little paws with needles massaged him. Baxter was afraid to move for fear of crushing one of them. He held still for a long time. At last the kittens fell asleep. He sniffed and poked them gently with his big nose. Uh-oh. Look who found him in there, the mother cat. All at once he felt happier than he had ever felt before. I did it, he thought. I helped them. They feel safe now. This is wonderful. Suddenly, there was Eloise, with eyes like embers. Eloise gave him a hard look, leaped into the box, and began at once to sniff and push the kittens. They began to waken and cry. Get out, Eloise said. Baxter climbed carefully out of the box. I didn't hurt them. I can see that, but it's feeding time. You're in the way. Past feeding time, Baxter said, remembering his anger. Poor little mites, crying and crying. And where were you then? None of your business, and don't think I don't know my business. Kittens are always hungry. They think I have to get away from them from time to time. Baxter looked at Eloise. The kittens were suckling. A pretty sight, he said humbly. Once the family realized that Eloise trusted Baxter around the kittens, everyone relaxed. He could come and go as he liked. To everyone's surprise, he spent most of his time with the kittens. Since Eloise only came around to feed and wash her babies, it was Baxter who really took care of them. The kittens seemed to think of his nose, tail, and especially his long dangly ears as a kitten playground. He's got kittens all over him. Baxter was with the kittens when they opened their eyes and when they began to walk. When they first learned how to climb out of the box, he nearly went crazy trying to keep track of them. He'd forgotten about his old life until one day when the kittens were several weeks old, the boy came downstairs whistling and tossing a ball. Come on, Baxter, let's go to the field, he called. Baxter, suddenly remembering old times, ran outside and trotted happily alongside the bicycle. They played fetch and then went into the woods nearby. Baxter dug up a rotting catcher's mitt, and to his joy, the boy let him keep it. When Baxter got home, he lay down and gave his mitt a thorough chewing. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Eloise vanishing through her cat door. Suddenly, he remembered the kittens. Baxter raced to the house, nosed open the door, and skidded around the kitchen linoleum into the laundry room. The box was empty. Sniffing, Baxter searched for the kittens, but he couldn't find a single one. Neither could he hear them. Where, oh where could they be? He sat down and howled Eloise and the boy appeared. "They're gone, of course," Eloise said. "Gone? Where? Where could they have gone? I leave them for one day and they vanish," said Baxter. "They don't need us any more," Eloise said. "They've got homes of their own now, where they've gone to be cats like me. Goodness, didn't you notice how big they were getting?" Baxter could hardly eat his food that night. He lay at the boy's feet after dinner, and when the family went to bed, he tried to sleep, but he just felt too lonely. Finally, he got up and went to the laundry room, where the box was full of moonlight. He snuggled up in it, comforted by the kitten's smell. He was still feeling too sad to sleep when, with a soft thud, Eloise landed next to him and curled up at his head. "It occurs to me I never did thank you for all your help," she said. "You're welcome. I enjoyed every minute of it," he sniffed. Eloise began absently to lick his ear. "Well," she said, "I have to admit, it's strange without them. It's good to know I might have more kittens some day. Anyway, I'm glad you're still here." "Oh, Eloise, really?" Baxter sighed happily. He fell asleep at last while Eloise licked and licked his ear, just as though it were a kitten. The Dog Who Had Kittens. All right, it's time to get moving. We're going to do a song called Rags the Dog. Sounds like a cowboy dog.
I've got a dog and his name is Rags. He eats so much that his tummy sags. His ears flip-flop and his tail wig-wags. And when he walks zigzag. He goes flip-flop, wig-wag. Zigzag, he goes flip-flop, wig-wag. Zigzag, he goes flip-flop, wig-wag. Zigzag, I love Rags, and he loves me.
Keep listening.
My dog Rags, he loves to play. Rolls around in the mud all day.
Oh no.
I call him.
Can you whistle?
He always
Runs the other way.
He goes flip-flop, wig-wag. Zigzag, he goes flip-flop, wig-wag. Zigzag, he goes flip-flop, wig-wag. Zigzag, I love Rags, and he loves me. He goes flip-flop, wig-wag. Zigzag, he goes flip-flop, wig-wag. Zigzag, he goes flip-flop, wig-wag. Zigzag, I love Rags, and he loves me. I love Rags, and he loves me. He goes flip-flop, wig-wag. Zigzag.
Good job. Let's read a story.
If you like this.
Walter the Farting Dog, banned from the beach. Mr. and Mrs. Crabble were having a ton of fun. There was sand and sea and sunshine every day. There was swimming and snorkeling and parasailing and lots of staff to boss around. "You there," called Mrs. Crabble to the pool attendant. "Get that leaf out of the water." "And bring us some fresh towels," said Mr. Crabble. "Make it snappy." "If only that dog weren't ruining my view," said Mrs. Crabble. The dog was Walter, digging happily in the sand. You never know where an old bone might be hiding. He detected something under the sand and dug more frantically. Treasure! A bone, and it's a big one. He strained to tug it free and let out an enormous fart. The umbrella was shading Mr. and Mrs. Crabble was blown into the sea. They watched aghast as it was carried away by the undertow. At that moment, Father and Mother arrived with Betty and Billy. Mr. Crabble stomped over to Father. "Is that your dog?" "Yes," admitted Father. "That's our Walter." "He shouldn't be allowed on the beach," shouted Mr. Crabble. "He blew away our umbrella." "It couldn't have been Walter. It was probably the sea breeze." "The sea breeze doesn't smell like that," said Mrs. Crabble. That evening, Mother said, "Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had our own little vacation home right on the beach? We can't afford it, said Father, who just bought himself a new set of golf clubs. Walter eats us out of house and home. Walter farted guiltily. There was a knock at the door. It was the manager of the resort. We've been getting complaints about that dog of yours. We can't allow him on the beach. I didn't see any rules against dogs in our brochure, said Father. It's a new rule, and it starts today, the manager stomped off. Sorry, Walter, said Father. You're banned from the beach. Walter farted sadly. Never mind, Walter, said Billy. Let's go for a walk in the village. Just stay away from the beach, warned Mother. In the quaint little village, lights twinkled in the trees. Everyone was enjoying the gentle breeze and the sweet smells of the tropical night. Walter was enjoying himself too. Travel broadens a dog's mind, he thought, farting philosophically. The Crabbles were sitting nearby at a sidewalk cafe complaining about their key lime pie. Mrs. Crabble counted the problems on her fingers. It's not big enough, it's not green enough, it's not sweet enough, or maybe it's too sweet, said Mr. Crabble, smacking his lips. A pelican flapped its wings at Walter, and Walter farted in alarm. The power of Walter's fart blew the meringue off Mr. Crabble's pie. It landed in his face and made an awful mess. The Crabbles glared at Walter. That dog is ruining our vacation. Next morning, Father got a phone call from the chief of police. I've had a serious complaint about your dog, said the chief. I'm afraid we can't allow him on our streets. Father hung up. Sorry, Walter, you're banned from the village. But where can Walter go now? Asked Billy. He's grounded, said Father. He stays inside. That's not a very nice vacation for Walter, said Betty. Walter farted. Need I say more? Asked Father. When everyone went out to have fun, Walter stayed inside with his nose pressed against the window. Aw, look, he looks all sad. They're going out to have fun. He's stuck inside. Well, thought Walter, I'll just have to make the best of it. He sniffed around for something to eat and found a sack of strange-looking tropical fruit. The label said, cook thoroughly, do not eat raw. Since Walter couldn't read, he ate it anyway. He went to snooze in the sunshine pouring through the window. So he ate a bunch of raw fruit, raw snacks. Betty and Billy were building a sandcastle on the beach. Look, said Betty, pointing out to sea. How did that island get there? It wasn't there before. It must have been underwater, said Billy. Now that the tide is out, we can get there. Let's go. They waded out through the shallow water to explore the mysterious island. This is the sort of place where you find buried treasure, said Billy, beginning to dig. Suddenly, something shiny glittered in the sunlight. I knew it, yelled Billy, holding up a nickel. We're rich, yelled Betty. Mr. Crabble sat up under his new beach umbrella. Those nasty children seemed to have found something. The Crabbles waded out to the little island. Let me help you, said Mr. Crabble, pushing Billy aside. Mr. Crabble found a rusty old key and waved it triumphantly. I have a feeling that this will unlock something very important, he said. Sure enough, 10 minutes later he dug up a door and the key fit perfectly. Maybe we'll find a whole vacation house, said Betty. Though they dug for hours, they didn't find anything else, and they didn't notice that their island was shrinking. The tide was rising fast, and the waves began to lap at their feet. Betty looked up and gasped, How did the beach get so far away? It's the tide, cried Billy. We're marooned. Out of my way, shouted Mr. Crabble and leaped into the water. Mrs. Crabble dove in after him, followed by Betty and Billy. They swam as hard as they could, but the undertow was too strong. The current swirled them around and dumped them back on their shrinking little island. Our only hope is to build a raft, said Mr. Crabble. Walter woke from his nap with a bad feeling. Betty and Billy must be in trouble. Walter's stomach was rumbling like a volcano from the tropical fruit that should have been thoroughly cooked, but he ignored it and raced to the screen door, locked. He stepped back and charged, bursting through the screen and leaving a Walter-shaped hole in the door. Walter ran to the beach and saw 4 figures in the distance. With the water rising around them, Mr. and Mrs. Crabble were launching their raft. Billy was trying to help Betty. All Walter could see of Betty was her little head above the surface and her arms waving frantically. Walter plunged into the surf. Shooting pains twisted him around and flung him back onto the beach. Was it a cramp from swimming too soon after eating? No, it was the tropical fruit that should have been thoroughly cooked. "Walter, save us!" cried Billy. Walter struggled to rise, but the gases produced by the tropical fruit that should have been thoroughly cooked chose this moment to erupt with terrible force. The tropical fruit fart produced a boom that was heard along the coast for miles. Coconuts blew off the trees, and the Crabbles, clutching their new umbrella, were blown all the way to the Sandwich Islands. The waves parted around the little island where Betty and Billy were stranded. Layer upon layer of sand and shells were pushed aside, leaving a pathway across the ocean floor. Betty and Billy ran towards the shore. Halfway there, Billy tripped on something jutting from the ocean floor. Walter raced out to help him. "It's a treasure chest," cried Billy. "Bones," thought Walter, and grabbed a handle in his teeth. He dragged the chest to the beach. Betty and Billy pried it open. Walter was disappointed to see that it only contained jewels and gold. He was hoping for dog bones. With the money from the treasure, Mother and Father bought the vacation home of their dreams. There was sunshine every day. There was golf and snorkeling and parasailing on the gentle sea breezes. Experts said it was the most important treasure uncovered in a century. But Betty and Billy disagreed. "Walter," they said, "you're the greatest treasure of all." Walter the Farting Dog, banned from the beach. I hope you had fun today at Preschool Storytime. Listen, put one hand way up high. Wave goodbye, it's time to go. Wave up high and wave down low. Wave real fast, and wave real slow. Wave goodbye, it's time to go. Wave up high, wave down low. Wave goodbye, I'll miss you so. Love you. Be good listeners. And remember, wash your hands. Get all the germs away. Listen, I'll see you in about a month when fall story time starts back up. Bye.